I'm Gene, and this is Perfect Flow. I'm a New Zealand-based athlete and coach focused on optimizing performance, health, and well-being. While I have a professional background in biomedical engineering, I've chosen to follow my more immediate passions for running, endurance, adventure, movement, nutrition, lifestyle, community, psychology, and personal growth. My goal in starting this podcast is to connect with bright minds to extract the information I need to live a life that makes sense and feels good, and share those conversations with others. Apart from your favorite podcast app, the best places to follow my work are perfectflow.nz, genebeverage.nz, and Perfect Flow on Facebook.
José Maravilla, vamos a ver. Gana Carsten Jorgensen, segundo Kremlier, tercero Sergei Lebedev de Ucrania, cuarto Mustafa es ahí.
10 years ago, I went to Denmark as part of the New Zealand team for the Junior World Orienteering Champs, and we had a coach who was one of the top elites in New Zealand at that stage, and he was also from Denmark, so that was super cool to have someone who knew the local terrain fairly well because they'd grown up there and could give us lots of advice. I recall on one of our training days, we stopped by the local athletics track on the way home so that our two coaches could do a 3K time trial on the track, and we thought this was cool. We thought it was pretty cool to see our coaches battle it out. It was also coinciding with a club evening training, and when our coaches arrived, of course our Danish coach got surrounded by these little juniors who wanted to get his autograph. They were like really into this guy, and we're like, whoa, what the hell's going on? And obviously some of the team knew our coach's history a little bit more than I did at the time, but it all became fairly relevant as I asked further. And yeah, it turns out the coach that the New Zealand team was lucky enough to have was the Danish champion in not only orienteering numerous times, but also cross-country running. And not only that, was the European cross-country champion in 1997, and also had a number of other very high places in European cross-country champs, and also a gold medalist at World Orienteering Champs in the relay. So I was pretty blown away by that, especially as a young junior just getting onto the world scene and just seeing how good the top Europeans were at orienteering and how much further I had to go. So I'm talking about none other than Carsten Jorgensen, who I didn't know quite so well at the time since he lived in Christchurch and I lived in Auckland, and I'd kind of only been traveling for orienteering for a year or so, paying attention to the competition as a junior elite. So that's before the year before I went to Junior World Champs, when I started to take things a little more seriously. And it's been amazing watching Carsten perform as an older elite and then a very old elite. And I think he maybe beat me last year when I didn't have the greatest race, but he's still cranking for someone his age. And I think when you have to come down from such a high peak, it's that explains why he's so good at his age now. And it's been amazing seeing him at the tail end of his elite career, and I wished I had seen him in the center of his elite career, because the results he achieved in orienteering were incredible, the best in the world. And it's great that I had a chance to sit down with him while I was in Christchurch recently and talk about his upbringing, his youth in Denmark, and also his time dabbling in road running and cross country, and how that helped him develop all round as an athlete. And that footage you could hear at the start of the podcast was from European cross country champs in 1997. And if you go to the blog on genebeverage.nz, you can see the video on YouTube embedded there, and you can watch the whole 25-minute or so race in Portuguese and get to see a glimpse of Carsten Jorgensen at his best. So I'm really happy to bring you Carsten Jorgensen from his home in Christchurch. Thanks, Carsten. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, welcome.
So last night was the first time that I'd seen your famous video. It was pretty cool. And I'm really keen to hear how you got that fast. So take us back in time.
Yeah, I was born in Denmark, and we lived out in the countryside a little bit. Like, what we normally did was hang out with the other guys in the village and played soccer. Well, kind of soccer. Played around with the ball and stuff. And we did also have a little loop around the village, which we sometimes timed and raced against each other on a little loop around town. But yeah, otherwise we're just hanging out and fighting my brother and whatever else, and going to school and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Where in Denmark exactly?
Yeah, so that's north of Copenhagen, something like about 6 kilometers from the sea in the northern end. Yeah.
And at what age did you start getting into running and orienteering?
Well, I got into orienteering first, so I started at when I was turning 11 that year. I started up orienteering, and then the orienteering club was there was a running club and an orienteering club with the same sort of name, and so we went training with the running club 2 times a week.
So is that a combined club?
Well, it used to be a combined club, but then the running club split out and had their own, but it was called the same. It was the same name, and then it was just called the running club, and Nord for North, and yeah.
Yeah, so that's a new concept for a lot of New Zealanders. I don't think there's such a thing as the combined clubs over here that you have in Scandinavia.
No, that like in Sweden they have in Denmark as well. Is there's lots of clubs that has all sorts of things going on in their sports clubs.
And what was the group like at that stage? Were you guys just interested in running? When did the competitiveness start up?
Oh, yeah, well, it was always competitive. It was always but yeah, the training always started out slowly, and there was a lot of chatting going on for the first something like a couple of kilometers, and then after that, people split out in their different paces, and it got a kind of, you just try to hang on to a group of people, and that was how it kind of worked. Yeah.
And what kind of races were you doing at that stage, and what distances?
I was mainly doing orienteering, but then I was doing running races, kind of more like road races, and races that they had like in trail races as well, and but there was not that many. It was like I was running, there was 2 or 3 local ones, and then there was a big one that's the kind of the biggest race in Denmark. It's got like about 20,000 people running race in close to Copenhagen, and that was kind of the big one. So there was between 3 kilometers, and this one in Copenhagen was about 14 kilometers or something like that. It's quite long for a little guy.
And what did you like the most about running at that age?
It was a thing I was good at, so that was kind of motivating, and there was just the people as well, hanging out with the people and talking and stuff, and then also if you could win a prize, it was quite exciting. So I kind of biked quite a long way to go to races, and then running, and then biked home again. And yeah,
I was talking about this with Varjan also. What comes first, the winning or the enjoyment of training towards a future win? Is it the results that are incentivizing you, or is it the like of the training process? So what kind of training were you doing, and did you follow a process or anything at that age?
No, I think I just showed up and was part of it. It was more the social side, and I think for at that age, I don't think it was much the training as such.
And at which stage did you start to move beyond the youth and junior level grades and onto the more national level, serious competitive end of things?
Yes, so already there we were running orienteering, the big races around going to the Danish champs and stuff, and as around about 15 or 16 we started having a training diary and started recording the training in there and having a sort of a coach helping with a little bit of structure in the training, and that was kind of, I guess, the more getting into kind of organizing my training a bit more, but it was still, yeah, just hanging out and going for a run with the other ones. That was on, and then I did maybe a couple of more runs a week. It was not a lot like that, but it was also then that was started to having camps with the training camps with the other orienteers. So it was mainly orienteering at that age. It has been mainly orienteering all along, really.
So was orienteering just one of the things that the running club guys also did?
No, I started orienteering, and then the orienteers went to the running club for training, and it was kind of, there was the same people, and then there was some more runners at the running club as well. So it was kind of yeah. So they were separate clubs at that stage, and they had split out, but it was the same people that was running in both of them, and there was just running training, and then you had orienteering training as well, but it was still the same people I was running with, really.
Is that sequence of events pretty common?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think normally, like nowadays, it would be that you're in the orienteering club and they do the orienteering, and then it would be a whole separate club that has the running. But it was just for that area where I lived, it was like that.
And what were your biggest and most memorable experiences as a junior?
There was lots of memorable things, but it's mainly going on camps and participating in that. And then as I got a little bit older, I managed to win the Swedish Junior Cup, which is kind of the biggest thing in Sweden, and Sweden being much better at orienteering than Denmark. It was a sad day for the Swedish people to be beaten by a Danish person, but not that I hadn't tried that before. There was a few people before me that was really good and could win those ones every now and then.
Did you have much experience in the Swedish terrain at that stage? Were you guys traveling over there to training camps and training weekends from Denmark?
Yes, at that stage we were doing training camps, and traveling to Sweden is like 1 hour, so you're kind of going on a boat and across, and then maybe a couple of hours up there. So it's nothing much, especially if you're from New Zealand or Australia or somewhere where you travel for hours and hours to go to orienteering or trail races. So yeah, we went quite often. There was quite a lot of orienteering on in Denmark, but then when you get just a little bit older, then it was the bigger races were in Sweden, and you kind of travel to Sweden or Norway even to do races.
Yeah, that's very cool. We definitely noticed that coming from New Zealand. We are so far away, and we wish we could just jump on a train and go to a huge competition in Sweden and Norway and experience how challenging the terrain is over there. Did you notice that the first time you went to Sweden or Norway, just how different the terrain was compared to your home terrain in Denmark?
Yes, I did. It was kind of feeling much more wild over there, and yeah, but I was only like 12 years old when we started going to Sweden, so it was already early on that I got exposed to running in the more wild stuff. And we were on a training camp, and it was like we did night events, and that was feeling quite exciting, but also a little bit scary. Yeah. So because you kind of didn't know if you were gonna get back home, sort of thing. But
especially with the cliffs.
Yeah, there are lots of cliffs, and then like a never-ending forest on the other side there if you ran in the wrong direction. So yeah.
So then when did you start getting interested in cross country?
Yeah, I kind of only started cross country a little bit later. It was mainly road races in the beginning. That was the big thing. In Denmark, cross country is not that big really. It's just in winter, and it's just it's not really big. But yeah, I started doing some when I was about like 16 or 17, but that was very occasionally, and then more when I got to about 20. Yeah.
Were there any trade-offs that you had to make with balancing the different sports over that time, or was all the training great training?
Yes, I think at any stage it was orienteering that was the main thing. It was just very little bit at the end of my career where I tried to do well in running. It was mainly that I was running all the orienteering I could do, and if there was no more orienteering, I could run some road races and there was races in winter. So it was good for training in winter. You could do some racing.
Yeah. We often forget how seasonal Europe is and how different the sports are between summer and winter.
Yes.
When you're here in New Zealand and you can do all the common sports all year round with no trouble.
Yes, exactly.
So how old were you when you started to really get to the elite level in cross country?
So we had we had a junior kind of training squad in orienteering, and we decided that we wanted to run in the athletic competition, like the winter competition. So we kind of started up a team where it was just us orienteers, and we showed up at the winter tournament. It's kind of that's to keep things going over winter for the athletic guys, so when they don't run on track and stuff, they all get collected in. So it's kind of like cross country. So some of the races are cross country and some of them were road races, and it was just a bit of a mix. So we showed up there, and quite quickly we won everything more or less. Like there were some really good runners there, and it's not like we as individuals won everything. It was more that we as a group were really well trained, and we could compete in there. I think I won a couple of races, and then some other guys, athletic guys, won some other races, and then as a group we were in front, and there was lots of discussion on how people were training, and you should train like the orienteers because it looks like they're doing much better, and this and that. So there's lots of commotion going on. But really it was we trained a lot, and we were well trained. So that was how it all worked.
Yeah, that's interesting how people look for some reason why someone might be doing better.
Yes.
And of course there's so much variation. There's natural variation and maybe seasonal variation and individual talent that goes into a lot of these things. So we don't want to read too much into it, but I do want to hear what kind of training you were doing and how was it different from the conventional training that the athletics and cross country guys were doing.
Yeah, I think at that stage there was kind of a turn towards running much more interval training and that sort of thing, while the old-fashioned Lydiard style stuff that has been going on, and it had gone on for a long time in Danish orienteering, because Lydiard came to Denmark and trained a group of orienteers back in the day, and one of them became the world champion back in 72 or something like that. And it was 74 anyhow. But anyhow, so that kind of training was there, and it was also influence on the running scene for marathon and stuff, and there was quite a lot of good results from Danish marathon runners. A guy won the London Marathon, was one Danish, that's the best result we've ever had from Denmark in marathon, and that was also inspired by the same sort of style of training. But then it had started turning towards the interval training because of the science-based, that you kind of do some science where you check that if you do some intervals, you're going to get faster. And then everybody, that's right, that's what science says. But it's not, doesn't really exactly say that. It just says you are going to get faster if you do some intervals, but you might have to do some other training to to base that off. So, but anyhow, it was all very exciting doing intervals and for those guys. But we were more training for long distance in the forest, so we needed to be strong. So we ran long times, and we ran like long distance, and we trained in the forest on tracks and in the terrain and stuff. And one of the reasons why we got really well trained were that we could train quite a lot when you run off track and on little trails and stuff, because it's softer underfoot and you get more variation in your running. Not that we were thinking of that back then, but afterwards you can kind of in hindsight see that some of those things were, and it was more fun. We thought it was just more fun running in the terrain and on tracks and stuff. So yeah.
And was it hilly where you were training?
Yeah,
a lot of Denmark's pretty
not
flat.
really. Yeah, not really hilly, but we had like when we got to be students, so we were around about 18 to 20 or something like that. We moved into Copenhagen, and there was a student home where quite a lot of the orienteers lived, and actually some of the best kayakers and canoe people, and there was quite a lot of sports people at that place, and that had like some streams and creeks and lakes and some hills there as well. Not huge hills. It's like 40 meters of climb, maybe 50 meters of climb at the most. But our training was that we ran to some sort of slope, and then we just ran up and down along the slope and zigzag around the different valleys and around. So we could kind of run, like we could run 800 meters of climb in an hour and a half, just going up and down in the terrain. And that's kind of more or less how orienteering is anyhow. When you race in Scandinavia, you do lots of little ups and downs rather than huge long hills. So it turned out that was really good training. Well, and there were some people that came before me that had already started that kind of training environment up and had training going when I showed up at the student home.
Yeah, and very appropriate for cross country, of course, as well, because you do have these repetitive small hills.
Yes.
Often in cross country.
Yes, it was like that, and we joined after a while. We joined a local running club, and they did have a lit track. That then, like a normal skiing in winter, you go on lit tracks, and it was more or less the only one in Denmark with this lit track, and that's where we did intervals, and that was like these little hills for skiing, but that was really good for cross country as well, and it was about 2.5 kilometers, so we did loops there. We had like 2.5 kilometer intervals. We did 2 or 3 of those ones in winter, and then ran back to the student home from there.
Do you recall tailoring your efforts into these little hills? Are you taking the hills as little punches, being aggressive when you hit them, or is it just repetitive, just time going up and down these little climbs that you're looking for?
Yeah, no, it was like when I was doing those ones, so it was either I ran slow, long, and up and down hills, or we ran full speed. It was like competition speed, just all you could, and try to do it as fast as you could on every single one of them. So
every single hill or lap?
Yeah, on laps. But still you kind of attack the hills and try and get good flow out of the hill again.
Hold the momentum into the hill and accelerate over the top.
Yes, and do all you can on those. Obviously it's not like that every time, because we did a lot of training, so we were often quite tired when you did the different training, but yeah.
Cool. And how old were you when you won European cross-country championships?
I was 27 years old.
Great. So those years in your 20s, were you just steadily getting closer to the top each year, or was there a bit of a breakthrough, or talk me through it? Yeah,
so it's quite hard to remember exactly, but it's like you run and train for a while, and suddenly you move a little step higher, and then you do the same for a while, and then you suddenly move a little step higher. We had lots of base training, and so so it was not gonna suddenly be faster from all that. So you build up the strength and endurance and stuff, and then put those intervals on top, and then the good times you got speedier, and it was hard to kind of predict when it was going to happen. I felt like, but it was just kind of continuous. We continuously trained harder and harder, and then we got better and better.
Yeah, that's also my experience with running. Is I feel like I'm making no progress, and then there's 1 week when I'm suddenly, my times are significantly faster than the previous week, and it just comes when you don't expect it.
Yes.
When you feel like you're never going to make any more progress, then suddenly, boom, up a level.
Yeah, so I think it felt like it was like that. It was, I can't say that if you do exactly this, you're going to get better. It's not, didn't work like that.
So that successful season that you ran, do you want to talk me through your preparation, how things gone in the off season, and where the race was placed in the season, and how you built into it?
Yeah, so this was this was one of our big seasons, because this was one we've been training for a long time, but it was not the cross country we've been training for the Orienteering World Championships, which were in Norway, and that was in 1997, and we had actually been on training camps there for like 4 years or something like that.
Wow.
It was training for the world champs in the US, was the similar terrain, and we were training there, and then they had the world champs in that area as well for 1997, and yes, so we were quite well prepared, and I lived in Norway for a little bit of that season there, and I think I'd also been to New Zealand for a training camp in winter, so had done quite good training at that stage, and at that stage I had done my big mileage was in 95. I'd done 2 hours on average training every day, running training for that year, and after that I'd started doing a little bit less mileage and a bit more just a faster training, but that year we've been training hard for that World Championships, and we've done quite well. And in our team we had a world champion from 1993, and we had like the World Cup. Did he win the World Cup the year before? Chris Jorgensen, and then we had another. So we had a really good team, and we had Torben Skovlers. That was a really good first leg runner. So we were aiming at that World Championships, and we knew we were on, like, it's the Norwegians' home ground. It's kind of more or less impossible to beat them on their home ground. It's like and they had kind of been the best for a little while. There's was a couple of Swedish guys that were really good as well, but the Norwegians had been the best for a little while. So, but the year before at a World Cup, we had made a bet with them that about winning who was going to beat the other team at the World Champs on their home ground the following year. So the other ones were going to buy them all the beer they needed at the party afterwards. So that was kind of the bet. So we were kind of motivated to do really well, and we did really well on the long distance. We had like 4 people in top 16 or something like that.
Wow.
I was 4th, just a few seconds out of the bronze medal, and we were doing well. And then the next day or a couple of days later was the middle distance, and we didn't do too well on that one. But then on the relay we were ready for the relay, and then we did really well on the relay, and we managed to win that relay.
Yeah. Do you want to talk me through the race a little bit? I know it was a long time ago, but how did it unfold, and when did the strength and fitness of the relay team really shine through?
Yeah, so back then there was 4 legs on there, and we had 2 longer legs for starters and 2 shorter. So it was like 11 kilometers in Norwegian terrain, quite long, over 60 minutes. and we were. Yeah, so we started out on the first leg. There was a couple of guys that got away on the first leg, but our man was in like number 4th place. And that's where the Norwegians lost it on the first leg. They were kind of,
Really?
yeah, they were a bit behind on the first leg there. So that guy had to pay all the beers later on. The other ones didn't want to pay anything. So anyhow, so that was Torben Skovlust on the first leg. I was out on the second leg and kind of got into that 3rd place, but we were kind of hanging a little bit behind the Swedish team and the Ukrainian team actually, and the Finnish team was in there as well. And then I can't really remember. We were kind of a little bit behind, but we were in there. We were quite like we hadn't had a medal ever before, so we were very excited about the whole prospect of winning any sort of medal or anything. So and then we went on the 3rd leg, and we were still in there with a good chance. And then on the last leg, we had the former world champion Allan Mogensen there, and then the Swedish team had managed to miss punch.
Okay.
Or they missed out of control,
Yeah.
and they got taken off course. And suddenly there was the Finnish team was just in front of us at the last spectator place, something 40-something seconds in front. And then it was just Alan got informed that there was 40 seconds up to this. So he just started motoring along, and out of the forest first came Allan Mogensen and this Finnish guy who was one of the big ones, Janne Salmi. He had to see Alan racing in, and we all came in, and in a huge. There were so many people there, and it was huge.
It's so tight. The end of those races, you're trying to push so hard, and the stakes from your team and everyone watching. If you screw it up at those pivotal moments, it's terrifying thinking about it. And reflecting on my experiences at WOC as well, I do feel that weight, that additional pressure that you don't feel in New Zealand, and I can't imagine what that pressure must have felt like for those last few runners.
Yes,
especially in at the tight end of the race, just in that final loop.
Yes,
but it was make or break, and
Yes, it was for us. It was quite good because we kind of thrived, and when it was the big events, we could be beaten all year in all sorts of events and the Swedish guys were good all season, but we managed always to lift ourselves up to do better at the big events. So also probably because we didn't have, we had about 20 good runners at that stage in the men's class, and
in Denmark.
And then so there was good pressure on all that, but it was still not the same as going to Sweden and having to run the hardcore races all the time. So we kind of had a little bit less pressure like that in our everyday life of ensuring that we look good. So we were like, we could earn our place in the national team. They kind of had to work a bit harder on that side, while we managed then to have a little bit of extra when it happened. Kind of from the Swedish side, or Swedish or Norwegian, they couldn't understand how they could get beaten by us, but then they did.
And just for comparison, you said the top end of the elites field in Denmark was around 20. How does that compare to where Sweden and Norway was at the time? Do you recall?
But they had hundreds, like maybe they didn't have hundreds at the same level, but there was quite a lot, and it was very competitive.
So it's still fairly similar to how it is today. Actually, it reminds me, it seems very similar, Denmark being smaller, but still having a very strong top-end elite group.
I think it's similar. It's similar. I think, it is similar.
And the cross-country European cross-country champs was the same year?
That was the same year. So this was happening in summer, and then the European cross-country champs was in winter. So that was later in the year. So we've done lots of good training, and the year before for the cross country champs I was fourth in the European cross country champs. So we have started aiming for that after the world champs. First there was the Nordic champs that we ran, and we won over the Norwegians and the Swedish guys again. So we just showed that it was not a coincidence that we had beaten them.
So as we, was this Orienteering or cross
Yeah, that
country?
was Orienteering.
Okay, yeah.
And then
The Danish
then the
team's
end.
still very strong.
Yes, at that stage, at the Norwegian champs, you can actually have two teams. You can have lots more runners. So, the Nordic champs. So that's what it used to be. There's no Nordic champs anymore.
Yeah.
And it was harder to actually do well there. And at that stage, we had lots of good runners, and we didn't really matter. We had two teams that could have won that day. We were in the top four with both teams.
Wow.
And then we ran out, and there was a Swedish and a Norwegian team in front, and then we won the bet them, and then we had our other team was just behind there. So that was that, and then that was kind of the end of the season. And then started preparing for the cross country, and we're doing quite a lot of interval work and training actually also with the athletic guys. Going to their training, so it was really good interval workouts with those guys, and we were doing intervals on treadmills and just pushed it as much as we could on those ones. So we were quite well trained, and then we put in, there were some good good cross countries in Denmark, but then I went off to run in Portugal for the Portuguese championships and qualification for the European champs, because the Portuguese guys, it's going to be in Portugal anyway, but also the Portuguese guys are really good, like one of the strongest teams there. So it was a good test of how well it was going, and I managed to win that, and like some huge trophy, and they like good big trophies down in the southern part of Europe, and I remember there being at the doping test afterwards, and hoping I was going to make my flight, but it was all right. It all worked out.
Cool. So did that make you the favorite going into the European champs, or were there a number of other people who were ranked highly from strong seasons also?
Yeah, so there was the Olympic champion on, I think, 5,000 meter, Dieter Baumann from Germany. He was always a big name, but and he was doing all right in cross country, so I think he was one of the ones. And then there was a few people around. There was the one that had won the bronze medal the year before, and then there was some up and coming, but the Spanish and the Portuguese guys were big, and the British guys were big as well, big names that was going to be hard to beat. And I didn't feel like I was more favorite than quite a few of those people there.
So it was going to come down to on the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And how did you feel going into the day, into that final week of preparation? Did you feel ready?
Yes, I felt ready. I had done really fast the year before on this test race thing in the lit track, and then I did even faster, and I did like about the distance you're supposed to do to run the whole race. So it was looking like I was in better shape than I had been the year before.
Cool.
So that was good. Yeah.
Yep. And everything went to plan on the day?
Yeah, I think my plan was, like I'd done on the Portuguese selection races, was just to start reasonably up front, and then just attack and just keep attacking until everybody's gone. And that was more or less what happened. What were you thinking in that final lap when you slipped back? It was hard work. Then it was kind of I just had to hang on to Claes Nyberg that had gone just in front of me on the last hill, so I knew I just had to hang in there. So that's what I did.
Were you second guessing, or did you feel like you'd have a good push in the finish straight?
Oh, I was just second guess. I just did as fast as I could, hanged on. There was there was no wisdom or anything. It was just pure, that's pure natural thinking about what to do. Was just just hanging in there.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's really exciting to watch, and I'll definitely watch it again. The race, I just saw the end, but I'll watch the whole thing, and I'll have it linked, so the listeners should also check it out, because it's very exciting.
Yeah, it's probably better in if you can get one with the British commentary. The Portuguese is a bit hard to decipher.
So that's really exciting, and it's incredible to, I think, be in the company of someone who's managed to achieve that level of success, and it's definitely motivating to see that all the steps that lead up to such a success, they're not unreasonable, and they're all achievable. Obviously, there's natural talent and some luck with injuries as well, and various other things, but it's not something. There was no superhuman gift that got given to you at a certain stage. It was many years of just incremental progress, slightly better this season than I was last season. And
exactly. When you look at the training, it's like more or less the 10% increase that you are supposed to do every year. And that's kind of what it was up to 95. And that was kind of, but it's a little bit tricky to say what is 10%, because there's all the things. But when you look at the hours, that was like 10% more hours every year since I was kind of 16 years old. So that was that's kind of that's what it is. And then it's also kind of the way that we were training, I think, made it possible to avoid too many injuries, because we were running in the terrain on soft surfaces and not too much repetitive same sort of stride and stuff. So
and it's also really encouraging to know that you weren't doing exactly what the conventional training was at the time, but your training was just as good. And maybe it's a reminder for some people to relax a little bit about some of the specifics, and just to note that there's not one correct way and a whole lot of wrong ways to train, and all these things that might seem different at one level, that maybe to your body feel very similar.
Yes, exactly. And it's just what motivates you is probably the best thing.
And when did the connection to New Zealand develop, and when did you move over?
So I already went to New Zealand in 94, maybe it was even 93, and we were on a training camp a little bit for the World Cup in Auckland, in 94. So that was the first time, and it was we had a good time traveling around, doing events and running a big APOC races, Asia Pacific champs, and so that was the first time we went over. We've been a few times on a training camp, and then later on I met Jenny at the Park World Tour, and a couple of years later we started going out.
Cool. And then you were doing like a kind of distance relationship, and then you eventually moved to New Zealand?
No, Jenny was living in Sweden at that stage, and she was lecturing at the university in Uppsala. But she moved. So we did, when we had our relationship, it all started actually when she was in New Zealand. But we met quite a lot at different events around the world, and then I came down to visit when it was winter in Europe and summer here, and then travel back again when it got too cold here, and summer and events was happening in Europe. So it's kind of quite a good lifestyle as well, having more or less summer, spring all the time.
The dream.
Yes.
Do you have any other comments on training, especially for orienteering, and trying to get that balance between doing the physical training and the technical training right?
We trained quite a lot of physical training. So we were mostly training just in the terrain, and then we had maybe a couple of technical trainings a week, maybe. and sometimes we had training camps.
Yeah.
But
And if you're training in Denmark, you're not getting the best orienteering.
no. So I wasn't always training in Denmark. So we did go on training camps to Sweden, and we did run for Swedish clubs. So we went to Sweden, and I lived in Sweden for different periods of time. So that was, they had training on and stuff set up for us to do orienteering and there was quite a lot of bit of orienteering, but it was never more than 10% of our training or anything like that. So
that's really interesting to note, because when we look at how a lot of the Swedes are training, they're doing a lot of orienteering.
Yes.
It's very convenient for them, obviously, to do a lot of orienteering because they're surrounded by great forests and great maps.
Yes.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that much orienteering training. And I mean, some of the best do a huge amount of orienteering training, but it's important to note that there's some very successful orienteers who don't do as much orienteering training as you might think.
Yes, I think we were more periods of time. We did a lot more than 10% when we were on a training camp and stuff like that.
110% orienteering training.
Yeah. So it's lots of orienteering, but we did have physical training in between when we were on a training camp as well. And I think it's always different for different people. So how much technical training you can handle and still be focused. So I think that's kind of one of the things you have to look at when you kind of weigh up how much you do.
Yeah. So what do you mean by focus there?
Yeah. Well, it means that you shouldn't just be running orienteering without focusing on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start slacking with your orienteering, it means that you are training something you should not be doing in competition. So I think for the technical training, it's important to know what the focus is for the training, and it's also that when you're doing that training that you are actually focused on that. And if you are letting go of the focus, then you should think about stop doing the orienteering and just focusing on doing the running training or whatever.
Yeah, you don't want to be practicing bad habits.
No,
and
exactly.
bad techniques. Exactly. That's worse than doing no training.
Yes, exactly. You kind of, it's you train, you get to be what you're training really. So if you're training something, especially for technique, orienteering technique, I think for running we were doing lots of slow running actually, but then when we were doing our intervals, we were running full speed and then hard out. So we kind of had very high intensity and then very low intensity. Yeah. But for the hard, it was probably quite a lot of moderate intensity as well, because we were doing hills quite a lot and running in terrain. But for the legs, it felt like they were kind of low intensity. But yeah, so I think for the technique training, it was good to be focused on the technique when you're doing that. And for running the hard sessions, like running physical training, it was also good to have the focus on doing full speed when you're doing that. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it. We could start talking about nutrition, but I think we have to go and do the cooking now. Yes. So we'll get in the kitchen and sort that out, and maybe get back to that on another talk. But thanks very much, Carsten, for giving up some time to talk. Yeah, and I hope the listeners have really enjoyed hearing Carsten Jorgensen. Yeah, thank you very much.
If you're enjoying the Perfect Flow podcast and want more value from it in the future, there are some ways you can support it. The first is to rate or leave a positive review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or other platforms where it's available. The second is to share this podcast or specific episodes on social media or with friends. The third is to get involved more directly through the Perfect Flow page on Facebook, where I'm trying to construct a more interactive community. I want Perfect Flow to belong to the listeners, and if you tell me what topics you're most interested in, or even suggest specific guests, I'll do my best to make it happen. This is your opportunity to be part of something that answers your questions and adds value to your life. Another good reason to follow Perfect Flow on Facebook is that I post links to episodes, blog posts, and anything I find useful to this page. It's a great way to follow my training, racing, and learning. Another great way to stay engaged is to subscribe to genebeverage.nz. This way you will get podcasts and blogs emailed to you, avoiding the clutter of Facebook. I don't know where this project will take us, but the reception so far has been positive. Who knows where we might be in a few years.